The Premier League title chase is well and truly on, with three premier sides all fighting for it. Manchester City, Arsenal, and Liverpool are all within a shout to try and claim Manchester City's title. Now, which of these sides is better placed to try and capitalize on the problems of the other two? I do have some idea of why I still have Liverpool as my title winners at the end of it all. It all depends on how you view it, because perspective is everything in this game at the moment. Manchester City are this formidable side who are going for their fourth straight title, and there's no reason as to why they couldn't be able to do it. When you look at the fact that Liverpool are struggling with a lot of injuries, and you look at the fact that Arsenal have a very tough run in, and they haven't already proven that they can be champions, because we saw their collapse at the end of last season. Manchester City have the greatest title odds. And then you look at Liverpool, you look at the fact that this is Jurgen Klopp's last season with Liverpool, and the fact that they have been able to ride out all of these injuries that they've had, and they are still within very striking distance of making it another title season for Jurgen Klopp, one that would be richly deserved, because he's a superb manager, and his ability to navigate all of the problems that Liverpool have had so far is absolutely incredible. And then you look at Arsenal. Arsenal on recent form have been the best team in the Premier League. They have scored a numerous amount of goals, and they have conceded very few. Overall, the doubts that lie with Arsenal is not really that can they do it, because everybody believes that they can. The question is, when are they going to peak, and have they peaked too early as they did last season? But anyway, guys, it's your boy Izzy. If you're new to the channel, please consider hitting that like and the subscribe button to let YouTube and everybody else know that you're enjoying this content. Manchester City's case is very easy to make. Manchester City have had a lot of runs in the recent past when they've been able to win 16, 18, 13 games in a row to finish out a season. So it's not really hard to see them as the title favorites. And they do have one of the most balanced squads in Europe, not only in just England. And they also have the best manager in the league, if you want to just take him on pure trophies won. But at the end of the day, the frailties that I do see with Manchester City is that they still do have a few teething problems. The likes of Doku and Nunes don't seem as though they have really settled into the team as well. And then you look at their back line, they don't really have a lot of dynamism. And Manchester City tend to concede a lot more goals in recent past, and they haven't been scoring as many as well, save for the game in the FA Cup. So when you look at what Manchester City have been able to do over the years, and the fact that they still have a seasoned manager in Pep Guardiola who knows how to navigate these situations and who's not going to let any of the standards drop, they are definitely the title favorites. But with a few of the problems that they have, which is a more difficult run-in than Liverpool, that is the reason why I still have them as third, because I still feel as though something is going to pop. And it's not really because I don't think Manchester City are the best team in the league as far as their on-paper squad goes, but because their run-in, coupled with the fact that they haven't been the most convincing in the last couple of weeks, is why I think that if they end up losing at some point to Arsenal in the next 2 weeks, as well as facing a very tough Real Madrid side and quite potentially a Bayern Munich or an Arsenal in the semifinals, that might be the point where one of those things slip from their grasp. In the Champions League, they haven't really shown too many signs of dropping off from the Manchester City side that we know, but in the league, they are facing a couple of tough fixtures that, when you couple them in with the Champions League, might cause them to drop a slight notch. Now, over on the Liverpool side, Liverpool's main problem so far all through this season has been injuries. The fact that they've missed Diogo Jota for a fair amount of that time, they've missed Salah for a fair amount of that time, and now they're missing the likes of Konate, they're missing Trent Alexander-Arnold, and they still do not have Jota. Liverpool have been able to navigate through some of these problems, but they are still seemingly willed by Jurgen Klopp's will to win the league. His man management is par none. He is the best at it. And this is something that even Pep Guardiola could possibly take something out of his book from, because Jurgen Klopp seems to have this extremely unique way to energize his players. And I know Pep Guardiola does it in his own way, but Jurgen Klopp has a very unique way that he does it. And he does it with a lot of energy, an extreme amount of passion, and which is why I understand why he feels as though he might have come to the end of his tether, at least as far as managing Liverpool at this particular point. But Other than injuries, I think the other thing that might stop Liverpool is the fact that they are inducting a lot of these youngsters, and at some point, one of them might make a crucial mistake that might end up getting them a draw or even a loss. And especially against a very organized opponent, it might be difficult to break those teams down. We saw that almost happen against Nottingham Forest, but in came Darwin Núñez, and he was able to notch a header in the very, very last minute of the 99th minute, in which it looked very fortuitous for them to have won that game, because a lot of stories surrounded that very last minute goal, the fact that apparently Nottingham Forest were supposed to have the ball, but all of that is conjecture at this point, and it doesn't really matter because Liverpool got the points. So what are the things that could benefit Liverpool in this title chase? They have the best run in. It is quite obvious that they have taken care of some of their more difficult opponents on paper, and right now it's pretty much based off of who they put out there to be able to take care of the teams that are in that run in. Much better than what Arsenal or Manchester City have to contend with. And at the same time, they also only have to contend with the Europa League. Now, some people will look at it as a positive that they got knocked out by Manchester United in the FA Cup. And I do think that that is a positive, because that clears up their room and it makes it much more easy for them to target just the Premier League and the Europa League. And in the opponent that they have in Atalanta in the Europa League, which could be very tricky. I love Atalanta. I actually pay a lot of attention to Serie A football, and I think Atalanta is a very, very tough team. And if they don't watch out, they could easily get knocked out by Atalanta. Overall, I do think that they're much clearer run-in, and the fact that they were knocked out of the FA Cup gives them only 2 competitions to concentrate on, and that possibly puts them ahead of Manchester City. As far as Arsenal, we also look at the fact that Manchester City have much more of a rapport with this business end of the season than Arsenal, because Arsenal, as we've seen, did not handle that pressure very well towards the end of last season. Liverpool, on the other hand, just because of the Jurgen Klopp factor, can get to the end of the season by navigating the know-how of how to try and win these games that are much more closer. We saw that against Nottingham Forest. That was a game that, if you would have had the Arsenal of last season, would have ended up as a draw. And you never know how that can carry on into the next game. Liverpool were able to bounce back from the disappointment of the 2018-2019 season into the 1920 season, when they absolutely tore the Premier League to shreds. That run, that legendary run that saw them win their first 21 out of 22 games, is something that is possibly not going to be replicated ever again. That's how good Liverpool have been. And that is the standards that Jurgen Klopp is able to apply into his team. So that's as much as Liverpool are concerned. I think Liverpool are still my favorites, and that is purely based off of their run-in and the fact that they have the Jurgen Klopp factor that might just put them a tad notch above Arsenal. And the only other reason that I have them above Manchester City is because they have a much better run-in. They're not in the Champions League. The Europa League has a slightly lower type of opponent that you would face in the semifinals of the Champions League. So that's that. As far as Arsenal, I have them as number 2 because let's look at their challenges. Number 1, their run-in is incredibly difficult. If they are going to win this Premier League title, they are going to have to win it the hard way. We're talking about trips to Manchester United, trips to Tottenham, a visit from Aston Villa, who are chasing for Europe. And then they also have Brighton and Hove Albion away from home. They have Wolverhampton away from home. These are teams that have caused all of the other big teams in the top 5 a lot of problems. Not to mention, Aston Villa have already beaten Arsenal this season. And out of everybody in the top 5, they are the only team that have beaten Arsenal. They still have a lot of tough teams to face, but with that type of run-in, anybody would be scared. And this is a much more difficult run-in than the one they had last season. Now, Arsenal, if you want to now look at their positives, they have been the form team in the league. They have scored a countless amount of goals recently, and their defense is the best in the league. They have the best goal difference. They have the most prolific attack at the moment, and it is all shared within the team. So it's not going to be very easy for all these opponents that they face to pinpoint one exact thing that makes Arsenal tick right now. Because when you look at Kai Havertz, you look at Trossard, you look at Martinelli, and you look at Saka, you look at Declan Rice in the midfield, you look at Ben White, everybody is firing on all cylinders. And then when you look at the positives, Arsenal also have a lot of players they're welcoming back. They're welcoming back Thomas Partey. They're welcoming back Jurrien Timber, who in my opinion is the best of their fullbacks. I know Ben White has been showing out of late, but Jurrien Timber, trust me, this guy is absolutely elite. And so you look at that and then you pair it with the fact that a lot of things might be aligning for Arsenal in the sense that they have gotten past a lot of the mental hurdles that have recently stopped them. We saw them break the round of 16 duck that they haven't broken for 14 years. We've seen them break a recent poor record against Portuguese teams when they weren't able to get past Sporting Lisbon last season in the Europa League. This season they were able to get past Porto, a very organized opponent who caused Arsenal a lot of problems and, in my opinion, overall won the tactical battle. Even though Arsenal ended up winning the game, one thing that I will leave you with is that all these three teams are very competent, all capable of winning this title. And right now it's anybody's guess as to who will win it at the end. I still think Liverpool have the slight edge, but nobody can say how this season is going to end because you never really know where one of these teams will slip up. What I do know is that if Arsenal are able to avoid defeat against Manchester City, as they have done with all the other teams in the top five apart from Aston Villa or the traditional Big Six, then that will leave the fact that all these three teams will have their fate decided by the teams that are in and around them, because Tottenham have a very huge say in where this Premier League title is going to go. Manchester United have another say to where this title will go. And Aston Villa, who also face all of these three teams, will have a say. Aston Villa will have a very big say. Tottenham will also have a very big say, simply because these two teams are chasing top four and they are readily incentivized to stop these three teams. And it's not just going to be another game to try and make it towards the end of the season. So it's going to be interesting overall. I have Liverpool as number one, Arsenal as second, and Manchester City as third, as crazy as that sounds, because everybody else is still with Manchester City. But I do think that if Arsenal are going to be able to avoid defeat against Manchester City at the Etihad, then that will bump them up on my rankings, because I do think that the belief that they will get from that game is going to be unquestionable. And so that's all I got for this video, guys. I know that was a long ramble, but I thought that I would speak on the title race as it stands right now. I haven't had the opportunity to talk to you guys for a while. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. This has been a longer than normal video. It's your boy Izzy. Up until the next time, or until the next review or the next video, if I so choose to just ramble again. Peace.